Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take complex ideas, stack up the source material, and really try to figure out what matters for you, the listener.
And today, we're attempting something pretty unique. We're trying to fuse ancient wisdom from the Dalai Lama with, well, the realities of the modern workplace.
Yeah, it's a fascinating mix. Our sources are centered around this incredible dialogue between His Holiness and the psychiatrist Dr. Howard C. Cutler. And we're focusing specifically on happiness, or maybe the lack of it, where we spend so much of our time.
Right. Finding genuine, lasting satisfaction at work. And that, as the source material makes clear right away, is a huge challenge. The core mission, really, is figuring out how happiness doesn't just evaporate the moment you clock in.
That evaporation thing is so real. Dr. Cutler talks about a friend, right? Inspired by mind training ideas in the evening.
Exactly, totally inspired. But then the morning commute hits, the difficult boss, the stressed coworkers, and poof, all that positive intention just vanishes.
It just gets swamped by the immediate pressures, the deadlines, the office politics, maybe just needing that paycheck.
Yep.
So the big question is, how do you build resilience? How do you keep that inner sense of well-being alive when everything outside seems designed to crush it?
Well, the starting point has to be this foundational message from the Dalai Lama's earlier work with Dr. Cutler, the purpose of life. It's happiness. That's the goal.
Okay, but how does that connect to the workplace grind?
Here's the crucial bit for today. Once your basic survival needs are met, food, shelter, safety, your actual happiness level is determined far more by your state of mind, your inner condition, than by external things like your job title, the company's stock price, or even your salary beyond that basic level.
So it's fundamentally an inside job, regardless of the external chaos.
Precisely. And the really encouraging part drawn from this dialogue is that this kind of deep, sustainable happiness isn't just some lofty ideal for monks. It's actually achievable.
For what?
Through systematic training of our hearts and minds. It's about reshaping our attitudes, our outlook towards the work we're already doing. The power, essentially, is always within us, even if we feel stuck in a difficult job or industry.
Okay, let's dig into that. Systematic training for the workplace. Dr. Cutler apparently synthesized the Dalai Lama's thoughts on motivation into a really useful model. It argues that how we see our work really dictates how happy we are with it. What are these levels?
Yeah, it's a 3-level framework focusing on our motivation. The first, and probably the most common, is what they call survival.
Right, the baseline.
Exactly. The focus here is purely external. Salary, job security, making sure you have enough for rent, food, clothes. It's about necessity. You do the work because you have to.
Makes sense. Then there's the next step up.
Yeah.
The one a lot of us are probably chasing.
That's the career focus. Here, it's about advancement, prestige, getting that better title, climbing the ladder, social status. There's definitely more personal investment, taking courses, networking like crazy, maybe working late hours for that promotion.
But the motivation is still external.
Largely, yes. It's often tied to external validation, recognition, accumulating wealth or status. Your satisfaction kind of depends on hitting those milestones, getting the raise, the corner office.
Okay, and the third level, the one linked to deeper fulfillment.
That's the calling focus. And this is where it gets really interesting. Someone with this focus sees their work not just as a job for money or a career path, but as having a higher purpose. They often do the work for the sake of the work itself, for the inherent satisfaction it brings.
And there's usually a contribution element.
Almost always. It often involves contributing to society, helping others, improving things somehow. And crucially, this can happen regardless of the job's perceived status.
And the research backs this up. People with a calling mindset are genuinely happier.
Absolutely. The data is quite clear. Social scientists have found that people who view their work as a calling report significantly higher work satisfaction and higher overall life satisfaction compared to those focused mainly on the wage of the job or the promotion in the career.
Wow. So your internal attitude, your narrative about your work, matters more for happiness than the actual job title or paycheck once you're past survival level.
Exactly. It's a powerful idea. The quality of your internal story shapes your internal state.
The sources use a really poignant, almost sad anecdote to show the downside of that pure career focus. Diane, the lawyer.
Yes, Diane.
Right.
She's a powerful example of how that career focus can go wrong. Highly talented prosecutor, rose quickly. But her driving force wasn't really service. It was using her career to get wealth, status, external approval.
So she moved to the private sector for more money.
Right. But then she hit these, glass ceilings, couldn't reach the absolute top tier of wealth and recognition compared to some colleagues. And the sources say she became utterly consumed by it.
Consumed by it.
Competitiveness, jealousy. Apparently she'd obsessively read legal journals, tracking other partners' wins, the size of their bonuses. Every success someone else had felt like a personal failure to her.
Ouch. That sounds miserable. Her self-worth was completely tied to outdoing everyone else.
It was, as the source puts it, a kind of self-inflicted torture. A zero-sum game where she could never truly win because the goalposts kept moving. She even turned down high-profile public jobs that offered real impact because they didn't promise the ultimate level of riches she craved. Her ambition just ate away at her potential for contentment.
So she tied her identity to something totally external and unstable. Now let's flip that. Contrast Diane with Carl, the orange juice factory worker.
Yeah.
His job sounds, well, pretty mundane on the surface.
Carl is the perfect counterpoint. He shows that the calling focus isn't about the type of job, it's about the attitude. His task was literally standing at a conveyor belt, moving boxes of orange juice concentrate onto a pallet all day.
Repetitive. Low skill, you might say.
Extremely repetitive. The narrator, Dr. Cutler, I think, mentions that when he tried it as a young man, he hated it within an hour. But Carl approached it completely differently.
Wow, what did he do?
He found joy in the physicality, in the rhythm, in perfecting the stacking. But more importantly, he connected it to a wider purpose. He'd apparently researched where the juice went. Seriously.
Yeah, and he'd make these funny, imaginative announcements while working, like, this batch is heading for the Queen's yacht. Or, careful with this one, it's for a colicky baby in Nebraska who needs vitamin C.
So he created meaning.
He created meaning and connection. He loved the camaraderie, knew everyone's stories, brought warmth and humor. His attitude transformed a potentially soul-crushing job into something purposeful and satisfying for him. He found his calling right there on the factory floor.
That really highlights the importance of shifting your viewpoint. If the work feels boring or tiring, maybe the first change needed is internal. There's another example, right? A young monk struggling with his studies.
That's a key insight. This young monk found his required studies tedious, a burden. He was reluctant, physically tired just from resisting it, but then something shifted.
What changed? He started to really appreciate the deeper meaning, the profound ethical purpose behind the ancient texts he was memorizing. Suddenly, his whole attitude flipped. He became enthusiastic, focused. The external task that studying was identical, but his boredom and tiredness just dissolved. His motivation moved from obligation, like survival or career, to service, like a calling. Okay, so we have this potential for finding a calling, but let's be real. The sources acknowledge widespread dissatisfaction. That conference board survey showing nearly half of American workers unhappy, and the number was apparently increasing.
Yeah, we can't ignore the legitimate external factors that make work difficult. So let's break down those common complaints and see what the Dalai Lama suggests. First up, feeling totally controlled, no freedom.
That's the big one, lack of autonomy and freedom. Dr. Cutler mentions friends in software complaining about having zero control over what they did or how they do it. Supervisors just constantly breathing down their necks.
Micromanagement, it kills motivation.
Totally. It leaves no room for creativity, initiative, or even just figuring out the best way to do your own job. The Dalai Lama's perspective is interesting here. He notes that even in extreme situations, like prison, people can still find internal freedom through spiritual practice, managing their inner state.
So if external freedom is restricted,
Yeah.
focus on the internal choices you do have, like your response, your attitude.
Exactly. Finding those small pockets of internal control becomes even more vital when the external environment feels constricting.
Okay, second major stressor, work overload.
Yeah.
Especially common now with downsizing, right? Fewer people doing more work.
Yes. This was apparently a concept the Dalai Lama initially related to through a traditional example. A monk being given an impossible task, like memorizing 2 huge texts in a week instead of the usual one. He recognized that short bursts of extra effort are one thing, but chronic, impossible demands are incredibly stressful.
And it crosses a line, doesn't it? If it's impossible and there's no extra compensation or time,
Yeah.
it becomes exploitation.
Precisely. The Dalai Lama was very clear on this. Giving someone an impossible load without acknowledging it or compensating for it shows a fundamental lack of respect, a lack of concern from the employer. He even said overloading an animal is disrespectful.
So what's the recommended response? Just suck it up.
No, absolutely not. The advice is crucial. You must know your own limitations and communicate them clearly to your employer. Reasonably, calmly, but firmly.
But what if you feel trapped? You need the job, the money. Telling your boss you can't handle the workload feels risky. How does this wisdom address that very real fear?
It acknowledges the difficulty, absolutely. Communication is the first step. Present the problem without anger, explain the situation. But, and this is key, if the employer is unresponsive, if they refuse to adjust the load or offer fair compensation, basically ignoring your worth and well-being,
And what?
then the sources strongly suggest that staying in that situation of perpetual exploitation is fundamentally damaging to your inner state, to your potential for happiness. If the external situation refuses to respect your basic humanity, your primary obligation shifts to protecting your inner well-being. That might mean making the difficult choice to look for new work.
That's a hard truth. It connects to the broader issue of unfairness and exploitation, doesn't it? Like nepotism, corruption, or just bosses who only care about profit over people.
Yes, and this is where a really important Buddhist concept comes in. Misplaced tolerance or misplaced forbearance.
Misplaced tolerance, what does that mean?
It means tolerance is good, but it has to be applied correctly. The Dalai Lama insists we should tolerate minor annoyances, personal slights, maybe a rude comment that builds patience, but we should not passively tolerate systemic injustice, corruption, or exploitation, whether it's directed at us or others. That's applying tolerance in the wrong place.
So you're supposed to resist injustice. How do you do that without losing your inner peace, without getting consumed by anger? That seems like a contradiction.
It's the ultimate balancing act. He uses the Tibetan political struggle as an example. You have to fight the external injustice using reason, strategy, nonviolent action if possible. But internally, you must work constantly to maintain calm, to avoid hatred or bitterness towards the person or system causing the harm.
Wow. So act outwardly, manage inwardly.
Exactly. If you let the injustice fill your mind with anger and resentment, you're harming yourself, regardless of the external fight's outcome. Inner peace fuels effective, sustainable action. It doesn't mean passive acceptance of wrong.
Beyond the systems and pay, there's the human factor, the relationships with bosses, coworkers. The sources say this is huge for job satisfaction.
Huge. And confirmed by lots of research, they mention names like Luscacco, Henderson, Harder, Schmidt, Keyes. A toxic social climate conflict, negativity, backstabbing can poison even a fascinating job. Conversely, a warm, supportive atmosphere can make even a dull job feel okay, sometimes even enjoyable.
There's that great contrast in the book between the two checkout clerks, Jane and Dorothy.
Yes. It illustrates the power of individual attitude perfectly. Jane was efficient, robotic, sullen, barely spoke, just processed transactions. Dorothy, though,
She was the opposite.
totally jolly, friendly, genuinely engaged with customers, remembered little details about their lives. And the observer, a bag boy, noticed that when Dorothy worked, the whole store atmosphere changed. Everyone, customers and staff, even the manager, seemed happier.
So one person, even in a low-level job, can fundamentally change the social climate just through warmth and connection.
Absolutely. Her positive attitude, her calling focus on service and connection radiated outwards. It shows the power isn't always top-down.
And achieving that kind of positive environment relies on interdependence and compassion. We need to cooperate to survive at work, but that's not enough for real satisfaction, is it?
No, we are interdependent. We need each other. Recognizing that helps foster cooperation. But simple cooperation can happen out of necessity, even with people we dislike. To build deeper, more satisfying relationships at work, you need genuine empathy and unbiased compassion.
Unbiased compassion. That sounds tough. Does that mean feeling compassion even for the difficult boss, the annoying coworker?
That's the challenge, but yes, it's essential for our own peace of mind. It means trying to understand that maybe their difficult behavior isn't about us. Maybe they have problems at home, maybe they're insecure, maybe they're under pressure we don't see.
So don't take it personally.
Try not to. And crucially, the compassion needs to be unbiased, directed equally towards everyone, not just the people we like or the people who seem less fortunate. The sources emphasize feeling compassion even for those who seem more successful or wealthy than you.
Why them specifically?
To counteract jealousy. Because regardless of their external success, they're still human beings. They still face suffering, loss, illness. They're just as worthy of understanding and compassion as anyone else. It levels the playing field emotionally.
Let's talk about money. For so many people, especially in our culture, pay isn't just pay. It's a measure of value, right? Tied directly to self-worth.
It absolutely is for many. And that, the sources argue, creates an incredibly unstable foundation for your identity. There's that stark story of the Wall Street broker.
Oh yeah, tell us about him.
His entire sense of self-worth was tied to his market performance. When he was winning, making big money, he felt like a genius, totally unbelievably high, impatient, almost arrogant. But when the market turned, when he lost money,
He crashed.
completely severe depression, felt like a total failure, even suicidal thoughts. His inner state was completely hostage to the external ups and downs of the market, something he ultimately couldn't control.
That's terrifying. Because money does come and go. Tying your core worth to it guarantees you'll be emotionally battered.
Precisely. It's structurally unsound. And it leads directly into the next trap. Pursuing money just for its own sake inevitably breeds never-ending greed.
The never enough syndrome.
Exactly. If money itself is the goal, you become its slave. The goalposts always shift. You get $1 million, you immediately start thinking you need 10 million. You get 10, you want 100. There's no end point. Contentment only comes when you can genuinely say, internally, that's enough for me.
It's hard to step off that treadmill, though.
Yeah.
People often argue they need more money for freedom.
And money does buy a certain kind of freedom from worry about basic survival, food, shelter, clothes. That security is essential. Nobody denies that. But the argument here is that beyond that point, chasing more and more money often leads to the opposite of freedom.
How so?
It creates more problems, more things to worry about, more vulnerability. You become enslaved to maintaining an expensive lifestyle. The source mentions the anxiety shifts from, do I have enough to survive, to, can I maintain this level of affluence?
Lifestyle creep. The more you make, the more you spend, the more you need to keep making.
Right. Suddenly you need the bigger house, the expensive cars, the private schools. You're arguably more trapped by your salary than when your needs were simpler. The fear of losing it all increases dramatically.
And there's actual data that backs this up, isn't there? It's not just philosophy.
The data is really compelling, almost shocking. It shows that beyond a certain point, enough to cover basic needs comfortably, more money does not equal more happiness. They cite a study showing real income in the U.S. went up significantly, like over 16% over 30 years.
And happiness went up too.
No, that's the kicker. The percentage of people describing themselves as very happy actually fell during that same period from about 36% down to 29%.
Wow. So we got richer on average, but measurably less happy. That says a lot.
It powerfully supports the Dalai Lama's point. Once survival needs are met, happiness is primarily an internal game. Which brings us to the Buddhist concept of right livelihood. People sometimes think that means you have to be poor.
But that's not it.
Not according to this dialogue. Right livelihood doesn't judge affluence itself. Having great material resources can be seen as the result of past positive actions or effort. The crucial factors are your state of mind regarding the wealth. Are you free from clinging, greed, obsession? And the means by which you acquired it, was it ethical? Was it non-harmful?
So you can be wealthy, but it's about how you got it and how you relate to it.
Exactly. The goal is to use your livelihood, whatever it is, to cultivate inner values like kindness and compassion. It's noted that this is incredibly hard for those struggling just to survive, but once you move beyond that point, the focus must shift to the inner dimension and the ethical means, not just accumulating more.
Okay, let's shift to the internal training aspect. What about dealing with just plain boredom? Repetitive tasks, feeling like you're doing the same thing day in, day out.
Yeah.
Carl, the juice guy, found a way around it.
Right. The key antidote proposed is reflection and connecting the task to a wider positive purpose. Altruism, basically. The Dalai Lama himself uses this technique. He apparently combats the potential tedium of his incredibly busy schedule by reflecting every morning on a specific verse from Shantideva.
Shantideva. What's the essence of that verse?
It's a core Mahayana Buddhist teaching focused on generating bodhisattva, the altruistic intention to work for the benefit of all sentient beings, dedicating his day, all his actions, meetings, teachings, everything to serving others.
So that reframes even potentially boring tasks.
Exactly. It transforms obligation into an altruistic opportunity. Reflecting on the why, the larger purpose, infuses the what with meaning and energy, counteracting boredom and fatigue.
Applying the calling mindset again. Now, what about challenge? Most of us try to avoid difficulty, but the sources suggest it's actually important for satisfaction.
Yes, this is a fascinating point. The Dalai Lama views hardship not as something to be avoided at all costs, but as the potential seed of happiness. Challenges are inevitable, so the skill is learning to transform them into opportunities for growth.
Like strengthening a muscle.
Kind of. He gives the example of debate in Buddhist studies. Engaging with difficult questions, facing counter-arguments, it sharpens the mind, deepens understanding. We don't need to seek out extra problems, but when they arise naturally at work or in life, we should try to utilize them to build inner strength, resilience, and skill.
This idea of engaging with challenge sounds a bit like the psychological concept of flow, doesn't it? That state of being completely absorbed.
It definitely has similarities. Flow, as described by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, is that experience of total immersion effortlessness, losing track of time, feeling your skills perfectly matched to a high challenge. The anecdote about the chemistry professor lost in his experiment is a perfect example.
Right. Hours felt like minutes. Deep satisfaction afterwards. And interestingly, research suggests people experience flow more often at work than during leisure time, at least in the US.
Which is probably because work often provides more structured challenges and requires skill application, unlike maybe passive leisure like watching TV. The Dalai Lama acknowledges this state, comparing it to meditative stability. But, and this is a really important distinction, he argues flow is not the ultimate answer for sustainable happiness.
Okay, why not? What are the limitations of seeking happiness through flow?
He raises three main points. First, flow is intermittent. It's temporary. It happens in bursts, maybe for a few hours if you're lucky, but it's not a constant state. We need something that sustains us through the mundane, the difficult, the non-flow moments too.
Makes sense. What's the second critique?
Second, the experience of flow, that absorption and loss of self-awareness, isn't always linked to positive emotions. It can actually accompany negative emotions like intense fear or shock.
Really?
He gives personal examples. Reciting complex prayers as a child in front of thousands of monks, terrifying, but he was completely absorbed, lost track of time. Or even fleeing the Chinese invasion in 1959, a state of shock and fear, but total absorption in the moment. The markers of flow were present, but the feeling was far from happy.
Wow, that completely reframes it. If flow can happen during trauma, it can't be the sole definition of workplace happiness.
Exactly, which leads to the third and most crucial point. Seeking happiness only through these intermittent peak experiences is fundamentally unreliable and unstable. The real goal, from his perspective, is an ongoing, stable source of inner contentment built through mind training, cultivating tolerance, compassion, contentment, purpose. This inner foundation can sustain you even when external conditions are awful, which flow alone can't do.
Okay, let's move to another crucial internal factor, self-understanding. How does knowing yourself, your actual skills and limits, play into job satisfaction?
It's critical. An accurate self-assessment prevents major sources of dissatisfaction. For instance, if you have limited skills but an inflated view of yourself, you might feel constantly frustrated, blaming the world because you think you deserve a high-powered job you're not actually qualified for. That leads to chronic unhappiness.
So realism prevents unrealistic expectations, but it also helps on the other end, preventing self-doubt.
Yes. Knowing your strengths and weaknesses prevents that paralyzing low self-esteem where you constantly think, I can't do this. A practical tool mentioned is identifying your signature strengths.
Signature strengths.
Yeah.
What are those exactly?
They're your natural talents, the things you're inherently good at and enjoy doing. Recognizing these and finding ways to actively use them in your job can literally transform how you feel about it. It can turn a job into more of a calling.
Like Toby, the accountant.
Perfect example. He was bored, felt stuck in number crunching, but he realized he had this signature strength, this love for graphic design using Photoshop.
Which isn't usually part of an accountant's job description.
Right, but he started incorporating it anyway, making reports visually clearer, more engaging. His boss noticed, appreciated it, and they actually changed his job description to include this creative work. It made his job far more satisfying because he was using a core strength.
That's great. But what gets in the way of this kind of honest self-assessment?
A couple of big obstacles mentioned are foolish stubbornness or arrogance, thinking you're always right, being excessively proud. This closes you off completely to feedback or recognizing your own shortcomings. It fuels those unrealistic expectations.
And the opposite.
Low self-esteem. That tendency to automatically underestimate yourself, saying, I can't, before you even try. It just shuts down any possibility for growth or taking on challenges.
So assuming you can achieve a more realistic self-assessment, how does that help navigate the day-to-day bumps, like criticism or office politics?
It gives you incredible inner strength and self-confidence. If you have a solid, realistic sense of your abilities, unfair criticism doesn't devastate you. You can evaluate it objectively. If it's valid, okay, learn from it. If it's just noise or jealousy, it doesn't rock your foundation because your worth isn't solely dependent on external opinions.
You're less reliant on praise, less wounded by criticism.
Exactly. Which connects directly to the danger of tying your entire identity to your job. What happens when that job disappears?
Right. work and identity loss.
Yeah.
The source gives that powerful example of the retired CEO.
Yeah, that story is chilling. His whole sense of self, his worth, was wrapped up in being CEO, the power, the status, the title. When he retired and all those external markers vanished, his identity collapsed. He fell into severe clinical depression because the job wasn't just what he did, it was who he was.
So the solution has to be making your sense of self-worth portable, not tied to one role.
Exactly, and the advice is twofold. First, outward expansion. Cultivate other important roles in your life. Spouse, parent, friend, volunteer, hobbyist. Value these roles equally. The more pillars supporting your identity, the less likely one collapsing will bring the whole structure down.
Diversify your identity portfolio, basically. And the second method, the monk's example.
That's inward expansion. This is about drilling down to the essence of your roles, including your work role, and tying your identity to that core essence rather than the external stuff like the title, the uniform, the salary.
What's the essence?
It's the fundamental human value or quality expressed through the role. For a parent, the essence might be love, nurturing, connection. For someone who loves learning languages, the essence is curiosity, the love of learning itself. For the monk, it's inner transformation, compassion. This essence is portable. You can carry that love or curiosity or compassion into any situation, even if you lose the specific job or role. It makes your core identity much more resilient.
Okay, let's talk about the idea of being productive. In the West, that usually means measurable output.
Right.
Getting things done, contributing to the bottom line.
Yes, it's often very outer-directed, focused on tangible accomplishment. The Dalai Lama challenges this conventional view, suggesting it can be ethically confusing and incomplete. His definition of truly productive activity has two essential components.
Which are?
It must be purposeful, meaning it's goal-directed, involves effort, uses skills, but crucially, it must also have a positive purpose. It needs to be non-harmful and ideally beneficial to others.
Purposeful and positive. The source uses a really stark paradox to illustrate this.
It's very powerful. By a purely conventional Western definition, meticulously planning something horrific like genocide could be seen as productive. It's goal-oriented, requires complex planning, hard work, but ethically, it's profoundly destructive.
And the flip side.
Conversely, someone meditating alone in a cave might look completely unproductive from the outside. But if that meditation leads to genuine inner transformation, increased patience, wisdom, compassion, and that person then interacts positively with the world as a result, their activity is considered highly productive in this ethical sense.
So true productivity is measured by its positive impact, both internal and external, which brings us back full circle to, livelihood in action.
Right. It's about cultivating constant awareness of the impact of your work.
Yeah.
Are you helping? Are you harming? The minimum ethical standard, if you can't actively serve others through your job, is to at least refrain from harming them. This conscious awareness connects your work life to your ethical core, which is a source of deep, long-term satisfaction.
And this applies everywhere, even in jobs that feel very routine or disconnected from some grand purpose.
Absolutely. Even someone working on an assembly line, doing a repetitive task, can find purpose. They can reflect on how their work supports their family, how it contributes to the community by providing necessary goods, food, clothing, whatever it is, how they take pride in doing their part well.
Finding the positive purpose within the task.
Yes. That simple mental reframing gives the work meaning and the worker inner strength, transforming it from just earning a wage into a genuine, purposeful, productive activity in this deeper sense. #tag outro.
So wrapping this all up, what's the big takeaway for you listening right now? It seems the fundamental shift needed for happiness at work isn't necessarily about chasing a different job title or a bigger paycheck.
Not primarily, no. It's much more about changing the lens through which you view the work you're already doing. It's about consistent inner training, building tolerance, reducing those destructive emotions like anger and jealousy, boosting self-awareness, and trying to align your work somehow with core positive values.
It's an integration project, really. Making sure your work contributes to, rather than detracts from, your overall life satisfaction, regardless of the external circumstances.
Exactly. That internal work builds a resilience that can sustain you.
And here's where it connects back to the Dalai Lama himself in such a fascinating way. We think of his immense responsibilities: spiritual leader, global statesman, constantly traveling, meeting world leaders, handling incredibly complex issues.
And a relentless schedule, immense pressure.
Right. Yet, when asked about his identity, he consistently says he is just a simple Buddhist monk.
It's profound. He sometimes even jokes he does nothing. The secret seems to be that he genuinely identifies with the essence of his work, which for him is inner transformation and compassionate service, not with the titles, the status, the political power, or the demands of the schedule.
By tying his identity to that core purpose, the immense workload becomes, well, maybe not effortless, but manageable, meaningful, sustainable.
It seems that way. It's rooted in something deeper than the external role.
Which leaves us with a final challenge for you, the listener, to think about. If the Dalai Lama can distill his complex life down to the essence of being a monk focused on inner work and service, what is the essence of your job?
Yeah. Can you look past the daily tasks, the title, the paycheck, and identify that core value or purpose your work allows you to express? Maybe it's problem solving, maybe it's creating something useful, maybe it's connecting with people, maybe it's precision, maybe it's supporting your family.
And can you consciously choose to tie your sense of professional identity and worth to that portable essence, rather than just the external rewards or frustrations?
That shift from seeking external validation to cultivating internal, purpose-driven worth, that really seems to be the art of finding happiness at work.
A challenging but potentially transformative perspective. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
See you next time.